What is up, guys? So today we're gonna be doing a type 1 for part 2 practice test for your EPA. And I know it has been a very long time. I really haven't had time to do any of these videos, but today we're gonna be doing type 1 for part 2 practice test. So first question, and this question is gonna come in every practice test. Like, it's gonna be in there because this is one. If you focus on type 1, this is one of the questions that's gonna come up, which is basically the definition of type 1 appliances. So it says, which of the following are included in EPA's definition of a small appliance? So the definition of a small appliance, we got here a product fully manufactured, charged, and hermetically sealed in a factory. Product having 15 pounds or less of refrigerant. That could be a very good answer, but not completely. Product with compressor under a 1/2 horsepower. Fully charged components ready for installation in split systems. So the answer for this one will be A, product fully manufactured, charged, and hermetically sealed at a factory. Question number 2. It says, which of the following is an approved substitute refrigerant for new household refrigerator freezers and combinations refrigerator freezers? So the one that could be a substitute, an approved substitute refrigerant, will be R600A. That's the one that is going to be used for refrigerators and freezers and basically small appliances. Again, focus on type 1. You're doing small appliances, a high pressure. So yeah, we do have R1 1234YF. No, that wouldn't be it. Or 1234CD wouldn't be it either. Or R170. That would not be it either. It will be R600A. That will be the answer for number 2. Number 3. Which hydrocarbon refrigerant is approved to retrofit into existing household refrigerators? Now, the answer for this one, HCR600A, 2 ounces or less. Blended HCR441A, HCR290, 1 pound or less. And a D, which will be the answer, it will be hydrocarbons are not approved for retrofit appliances. That will be applications. I'm sorry. That will be the answer for number 3. Recovery device for use with small appliances containing CFCs, HCFCs, and HFCs must HCFCs and HFCs must meet which of the following requirements? So in this one, small appliance, just remember an for this one, a tip for this one, and when it has an operating compressor, it will be 90% and 4-inch vacuum. When is an inoperated compressor, it will be 80% and 4-inch vacuum. So let's read the answers. Recovery 90% of the refrigerant when the compressor is operating. Thus, the keyword is operating. 90% you recover, or achieve a 4-inch vacuum under conditions of ASHRAE 740. That would be a good answer. Recovering 80% of the refrigerant when the compressor is operating. Again, when it's operating, you gotta recover 90%, not 80, so that's not the answer. Recovering 95, we already know that's not gonna be the answer because you never recovered 95. And the last one, recovering 75, that would not be the answer either. So the answer for this one would be A, recovering 90% of the refrigerant when the compressor is operating and achieve a 4-inch vacuum, or achieve a 4-inch vacuum under the conditions of ASHRAE 740. Who must certify recovery equipment used during a maintenance, service, or repair of small appliance that uses CFCs, HCFCs, and HFCs? So for number 5, an ASHRAE approved laboratory recovery equipment for small appliance does not require approval. An ASHRAE 740 standard laboratory, an EPA approved laboratory. An EPA approved laboratory will be the answer for this question. Number 6, equipment which is used to recover CFCs, HCFCs, and HFC refrigerant from small appliances for the purpose of disposal must meet which standard? Recover 95% of the refrigerant whether or not the compressor is operative. Recover 80% of the refrigerant with an inoperative compressor and 90% of the refrigerant with an operative compressor. Again, when it's inoperative, it's 80%. When it's operative, it's 90%. So that is a very good answer. It has both 80% when it's not operating, 90% when it's operating. So that will be a very good answer. The next one, it says recover 90% of the refrigerant when with an inoperative compressor. Is inoperative, so it should be 80, not 90. So that is not the answer. Recover 75% of the refrigerant. We know you do not recover 75% of the refrigerant. So the answer for this one will be B. Recover 80% when it's not operating, 90% when it's operating. The cell of CFC, HCFCs, and the cell of CFC, HCFCs, HFC, and HFOs, refrigerant to service or install refrigeration and air conditioning equipment, is banned from use unless you have a recovery machine, limited by law to HVAC contractors and or mechanical engineers. No, allowed only if there is proof of need. No, restricted to technicians who are EPA certified in refrigerant recovery. Yes, that will be the answer. It is restricted to technicians who are EPA certified in refrigerant recovery. That is why you're getting the EPA. That is why this test is for. So you can be able to purchase refrigerant and sell refrigerant and just handle refrigerant. So D will be the answer for that answer. When servicing a small appliance found to be leaking, it is mandatory to repair the leak within 30 days. Again, if you have a small leak, it's not mandatory to repair it. It is necessary to repair it once it's found, or so it is needed to repair it, but it's not mandatory to repair it. So mandatory to repair the leak only when no, it's not mandatory to repair. Again, not mandatory to repair the leak, but it is recommended to do so whenever possible. Mandatory, no, we know it's not mandatory. So the answer for this one will be C, not mandatory to repair the leak, but it is recommended to do so whenever possible. 9. Which of the following best describes low loss fittings on refrigerant recovery devices used to recover? CFCs, HCFCs, and HFCs. They can be either manually closed or automatically closed when disconnected to prevent loss of refrigerant from hoses. Uh, they they are used to connect the recovery device to an appliance and leak only small amounts of refrigerant during use. It could be a very good answer. They are used to connect the recovery device to an appliance and must be discharged after each use. They eliminate the loss during recovery. So for this one, the answer will be they can be either manually closed or automatically. They can either be manually closed or automatically closed when disconnected to prevent loss of refrigerant from hoses. Which of the following refrigerant is very high pressure, and generally does not need to be recovered? So a refrigerant that's high pressure and does not need to be recovered, we do know R22 needs to be recovered because is flat is dangerous to the environment. R R134A does need to be recovered either too, and R404A does need to be recovered. The one that does not need to be recovered because it's not dangerous is R744 refrigerant. So D will be the answer for this question. Next question. What should a technician do if the refrigerant in a recovery cylinder is suspected to be contaminated? Turn refrigerant in for reclamation, weigh the cylinder, discharge the refrigerant, dilute the refrigerant with virgin refrigerant. So if it's suspected to be contaminated, you need to turn refrigerant in for reclamation. So the next question, if a reclamation facility now is basically is suspected to be contaminated, so you turn it into a reclamation facility. Now it says if a reclamation facility receives a tank mixed with refrigerant, there's two things that they can do. They can refuse to take the refrigerant, and they can charge extra if they take the refrigerant. So I believe, yeah, A is the answer. Refuse to accept the refrigerant or charge extra for processing it. We're not gonna read the other ones because the other ones don't apply here. They don't make sense. The system-dependent passive recovery process never needs the use of a pump or heat to recover refrigerant, must use a pressure release device to prevent the technician and to protect the technician and equipment. Recover refrigerant in a non-pressurized container can only be performed on a system with an operative compressor. So the answer for this one would be C. Recover refrigerant in a non-pressurized container. When installing any type of access fitting onto a sealed system, the fitting should be leak tested before processing with recovery. It is not necessary to leak test an access fitting. The fitting needs not to be leak tested until the total repair is completed. The system must be pressurized with dry nitrogen before leak testing can be attempted. So now, if you have a fitting that you put it on a system that you are installing into a system, you need to leak test the fittings before anything else. So the answer will be A. The fitting should be leak tested before processing with recovery. Yes, that will be the answer for folding. A standard vacuum pump designed specifically for evacuating and dehydrating can be used alone as a self-contained active recovery. Never be used as a recovery device in contamination with pressurized container. Be used alone as a substitute for any recovery device. Be used alone as a system-dependent passive recovery. So the answer for number 15 would be B. Never be used as a recovery device in contamination with a pressurized container. Number 16. How many access valves are needed to recover the refrigerant on a sealed system with an operating compressor that has a completely restricted capillary tube? So if it has a completely restricted capillary tube, you need both valves. So the answer for this one will be two valves, one on the high side and one on the low side of the system. Only one access valve? No. Only one access valve? No. You need two valves, one on the high side and one on the low side. 17. What may be done to speed the recovery process and ensure that all CFC, HCFCs, or HFC refrigerant has been removed from an frost-free refrigerator? So a tip for this one, when you read the word frost-free, so you won't have to read the whole question, you just read frost-free, turn on the defrost heater. So frost-free, turn on the defrost heater. You see all the other, I'm gonna go over the answers. So cool the compressor to force liquid out of the high side. Heat the recovery cylinder to vaporize the liquid refrigerant. Turn on the defrost heater to increase the refrigerant temperature and vaporize the liquid. Pack ice around the evaporator to ensure minimum liquid is available. So again, frost-free, turn on the defrost heater. Number 18. Which of the following is required when attaching a gauge set to check system pressure? Release a small amount of refrigerant to check for contamination. Have manual or self-sealing valves on the ends of your gauge set to minimize any release of refrigerant. Recover refrigerant and recharge to specifications even if no repair is needed. Use hoses that are at least that are 3 feet or longer. So no, the answer for number 18 will be B. Have manual or self-sealing valves on the ends of your gauge set hoses to minimize any release of refrigerant. what must be done to the refrigerant that is vented off the top of the filling? What must be done to the refrigerant that is vented off the top when filling a charging cylinder? The refrigerant needs not to be recovered. The refrigerant must be recovered only if it's a CFC or HCFC. Again, all refrigerant needs to be recovered. It is refrigerant, it is harmful, so it does need to be recovered. The refrigerant must be recovered if it is CFC, HFC, and HF. If it's HCFC or HFCs, the refrigerant must be reclaimed or incinerated. So the answer for number 19 will be C. The refrigerant must be recovered if it is CFC, HCFC, or HFC. If it's HFO, it's not really harmful to the environment, so it does not need to be recovered. Why should the technician watch for signs of contamination in the oil when recovering refrigerant from a system that experience a compressor burnout? Contaminants cannot be removed from the refrigerant, and the refrigerant will have to be destroyed by the reclamation center. The system will have to be flushed if contaminants are presented. The contaminants will eat away at the recovery equipment. The contaminants will plug up the recovery equipment. So the answer for number 20 will be B. The refrigerant, the system will have to be flushed if contaminants are present. Why should low and high side access valve be installed when recovering refrigerant from a household refrigerator? So if you have high side and low side installed, it is kind of simple, is to improve speed of recovery. The other ones don't really make sense, to prevent non-condensable contaminations, to prevent to protect the recovery machine, to prevent oil migration. No, it's to improve the speed of recovery. 22. Which of the following are recommended safe work practice when recovering refrigerant? Now, safe one, a tip for this one, if it has the word safe or safety, it is safe work practice, so it is gonna be the answer. Wear safety eyewear and multi-line gloves when connecting disconnecting hoses. Wear a respiratory. You don't need to wear a respiratory. Wear cutting gloves. Cutting gloves. You don't need to wear that. Ventilation is only necessary if oil appears. You don't need that. So wear safety eyewear and multi-line gloves when connecting and disconnecting hoses. That is gonna be the answer. 23. When using nitrogen to repair a sealed refrigeration system, what should the nitrogen tank always be equipped with? So you go on the field, you're gonna see a nitrogen tank. You're always gonna use a nitrogen tank to leak check the system, but the nitrogen tank always needs to come with a regulator so you can read the pressure and everything. So regulator is the answer right there. Float sensor, no. Red top, no. Hand valve, no. It will be a regulator. A very large refrigerant leak can cause suffocation because refrigerant smells strong and make breathing difficult, are lighter than air and can cause dizziness, or heavier than air and displace oxygen, sting the nose and cause sneezing. No, the answer is gonna be are heavier than air and displace oxygen. What can CFC, HFC refrigerant decompose into a high temperature, open flame, glowing metal surface? For this one, a tip that I have is gonna be if that I say in class, and you do read these words a lot in the book that you get about this test and all that. But a tip that I have for this one is if you can read it, that's the answer. So most of the words in here you won't be able to read it, but the answer is just gonna be hydrochloric and hydrofluoric acids. That's gonna be the answer. Hydrochloric and hydrofluoric acid is gonna be the answer for 25. So that is the end of type 1 for practice test number 2. And next video we're gonna be doing type 2. Peace.